Our next speaker, Greg Luken, took a long and winding road to get where he is today. That road included dropping out of college to go on the road, eventually completing a degree in English, and starting Luken Investment Analytics despite getting a letter from a major Wall Street firm advising him to look for a career in a different field. At the age of 13, Greg's parents defied doctor's orders and bought him his very first pair of tennis shoes, the first pair he'd ever owned. The second pair took on a significance and a meaning he never imagined. He'll share with you why those shoes became a symbolic reminder and why he keeps a green pair in his office, and the best advice that he never took. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me give a big welcome to Greg Luken and the Red Couch.
Hey, thanks a lot. So 8th grade, the end of football practice, Coach Roy called me aside. Said, Luken, I heard that you're going to transfer to the city school next year. I want to give you some advice. You need to stay here and play football for me, because if you transfer to the city school, I guarantee you'll ride the bench. I didn't take that advice. Transferred in 9th grade, got to be the new kid. Anybody ever done that? Yeah, that's a lot of fun, right? In typical new kid tradition, I got picked on, I got made fun of, and I even got beat up. And one of the things I got made fun of was I was on the football team, but I didn't play. I rode the bench all season, just like Coach Roy guaranteed I would. Was that the best advice? Maybe not. In 1977, the cool kids at my school wore Adidas, but the ones who were social outcasts or didn't know what you were supposed to wear got whatever was in the bargain bin. And what that meant at my house was my second pair of tennis shoes ever were green Chucks. So that was something else that people could make fun of me for. But you know, every story like this has a female character in it, right? The popular girl. I'll call her Janet, not her real name. She was a cheerleader. We had every class together. And she was very fond of saying something every time I spoke. She would say, Luken, you are so gay. You are so queer. And I didn't think she meant it as a compliment. So I'm 14, I'm about to explode, I'm desperate. And I did what desperate young men have done for decades. I picked up a guitar. I didn't put it down. 4, 5, 6 hours a day, 7 days a week. It became my sanity, my therapy. I mean, it was really my identity. It even became my job. It opened up a world that I never dreamed. It brought me so much joy just to play. I met all kinds of people I never would have met. I got to be in all kinds of situations I never would have been in. I learned about concentration, about dedication, about perseverance. I learned about practice, deep learning. I learned about how you get on a plateau and how you get off. I learned about being in a flow state. It changed my life. And the symbol for me was these green Chucks. The personification of my torment was Janet. Fast forward, I made it out of high school. I even started my last 3 years. And at the end of my sophomore year of college, Professor Utley called me aside after class one day and said, Luken, a little birdie told me you're not joining us this fall, that you're dropping out to play in a band. And I said, yeah. She said, I have 2 pieces of advice for you. Number 1, don't let any cobwebs grow in the attic. And number 2, take time to watch the ducks. I think it's great you're doing this. I know it takes a lot of courage to do what people don't expect you to do. Fast forward, I'm in a state of confusion. I'm not sure what geographic state I was in, but I remember wandering down on the banks of the Ohio River, watching the muddy water flow by one afternoon, trying to figure life out. I saw 2 ducks, mallards. And I remembered her advice. And I realized I had let cobwebs grow in the attic. So I went out and I bought this book, The Immortal Poems of the English Language. And I read it. Bryce, Shelley, Wordsworth, Donne, Browning, Shakespeare. Have you ever done something so often that people start to kind of make fun of you? Right? She always says that. He always does that. Well, I think that was the point of this picture. It was the closest I could find to a G-rated picture from that era. So that was advice that I didn't take, but I did take belatedly. Fast forward, 20-year reunion of sorts. I sit down at a table. People are filling in the table across from me. And seated directly across from me are Janet and her now husband, Mark. Well, 20 years have gone by since high school. We had a great conversation. At one point during the conversation, Mark said something. He and I laughed, and his wife, Janet, rolled her eyes, put her hand on his arm, and affectionately said, "Mark, you are so gay. You are so queer." It meant nothing. For 2 decades, I'd been walking around with a scar, but I'd never been injured. I thought venom was pulsing through my veins, but I'd never been bit. I almost couldn't speak for the rest of dinner. I was in a state of shock. A little while after that, I found out Professor Utley died. And I'd never said thank you to her. And I felt like a higher power, God, the universe, was telling me there was advice I hadn't taken. And that was that I needed to be thankful and grateful to the people who had encouraged me and built me up. And I went on a campaign of writing handwritten letters and following up with phone calls to teachers, coaches, professors, to let them know what a meaningful impact they'd had on my life. And as I was preparing to be here with you today, I was thinking about that, and I heard this voice telling me, "You missed it. You didn't take the advice you should have taken." See, it's not just the people who built you up that got you where you are today through that long and winding road. It's not the people who just said the encouraging words, although that's important. Be thankful and grateful to them. You said thank you to the protagonists, but you didn't say thank you to the antagonists. You didn't say thank you. You weren't grateful and appreciative for the people who set up hurdles, for the people who told you you can't do it. And that's part of what made you who you are today. You see, the best advice I never took was to say thank you to the people who said I couldn't do it. I never said thank you to the Janets or the Coach Roys. Until last week. Because I knew I couldn't get up here and confess without totally confessing. And that's when I called Janet and Roy to let them know how much they meant to my life. I did a little math and I figured out Coach Roy was 24 years old at that time. He was a kid. What did he know? So my question to you today is there somebody who's had an impact on your life? Maybe it was somebody who said something positive or told you that you couldn't, but it got you where you are today. Do they know? What advice should you take? But more importantly, what advice will you take?